Here, coach, trainer, entrepreneur. Today, we're going to be going through this Kingdom Builder session, and this is a Bible study for faith-based entrepreneurs that want to learn how to expand your influence to ultimately elevate His kingdom. We're going through a series of Can You Think and Grow Rich Biblically? And specifically today, we're going to be going through what we call the biblical billionaire. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, like this, share this. Also, subscribe to our YouTube. We put all of these replays onto our YouTube as well too. And if you've missed any of the other sessions on this, take a look at those previous ones as well. So to give you some background, if you're in business, if you're in personal growth, if you're in entrepreneurship, you've probably heard of this book called Think and Grow Rich. If you have, put a 1 in the chat. If you haven't, put a 2 in the chat. Just curious. Very great book, sold tons of copies. And we're going through this methodically, chapter by chapter, and we're seeing how about in the biblical sense? Because if you've been around the church, if you've been around any type of faith circle, there's this weird notion. I don't know if you've encountered it, but when it deals with making money, when it deals with like that word with the Bible, like it's a weird word, right? It causes all types of weird feelings and everything. So as we're going through these series, I'm tackling, can you think and grow rich biblically? Is there such a thing? So what I want to peer into today is the biblical billionaire. Now, I think in our world today, we all have a fascination with billionaires, right? Pick your favorite one. Maybe it's Jeff Bezos and you've been watching him and it's fascinating to see his journey. Maybe it's Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk I think he's a billionaire, if not a trillionaire. I don't even know. But there's something about billionaires, isn't there? In fact, put in the chat, who's a billionaire that you kind of follow? Who's a billionaire you're fascinated by, right? Billions and all these. There's something with in the Bible. Did you know there's billionaires in the Bible? Actually, there's trillionaires. Solomon, it says that to this day, if his wealth were scaled for today's standards, he would have been a trillionaire. But we're going to talk about one billionaire specifically today, and what can we learn from that? You know, and a friend said, God and money don't mix. Well, let's go through that, right? Because what does the Bible actually say about money? It's horrible. Why would some people that were people of faith be wealthy? So we're going to tackle this in a balanced way today, and we're going to look into the Bible and see what it says. And I'd love to hear what it is that you think about this. Okay, so here's a dude named Joseph. If you didn't know Joseph, the after story, Joseph became the second in command to Pharaoh back in the day. Now, if you know Pharaoh in Egypt, Pharaoh was basically a god to the Egyptian. I mean, he literally was a god to the Egyptian people. Okay. So if you assist, and we're going to go through Genesis 37 today, it's an interesting story about this guy named Joseph, who became second in command to Pharaoh, saved a bunch of people. And actually, if you look at his modern day scaled wealth, he was for sure a multi-billionaire, but he was a biblical billionaire. However, there's some interesting principles in this as we're thinking about, can you think and grow rich biblically, that I want to be able to vet through. Now, this is interesting. Every single dream that we have, it's a very normal thing to dream, to want more. In fact, I think it's kind of weird if you've ever met somebody that has no desire in life. It's a very, very strange thing, right? Every single living creature, whether it's a plant, to an animal, to the human being, the natural want that we all have is to grow, is to expand. In fact, in Genesis 1, in the original creation, God says he created man and he said, be fruitful and multiply. Like that was the original command, not anything else. Like be fruitful and multiply. So it's important that we understand that it's normal to have desire. It's normal to have want. It's normal to have a dream. So as we read through Joseph's story, it's interesting because he had a dream. Let me read through this. This is Genesis 37. If you're following along at all, we can learn some things. So Here we go. Genesis 37:5. Then Joseph had a dream. And Joseph, maybe you're kind of like this as well too, a little bit immature with the dream. He had brothers. He was the youngest one. He was kind of the one that his brothers envied, right? And he said he had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him even more. Okay, not wise. Hello. And the dream was kind of funny, right? Let me read through it. This is not a wise way. So I'll just tell you that this story doesn't start well. But you have a dream, and maybe that's how you are with your dream as well too. You have a dream for wealth or success or whatever it is that you have a dream for. This is what Joseph had, this dream of power. He says, "For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field. Behold, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed to my sheaf." So basically, he's telling his brothers, "Hey, I got a dream that I'm going to be like super powerful and you're like bowing down before me." Not wise. Not wise to share. But so I guess there's a lesson here on be careful who you share your dream with, I suppose. And then his brother said, "Are you really going to reign over us?" And brothers did not like it. If you know the story, what ends up happening, the brothers actually end up almost killing him, end up selling him. And here's a guy with a dream that ends up from dream to slave to prison. Okay, not a good way to start your dream. However, we know that at the end of the story, this guy becomes a biblical billionaire. So, what changed, and how can we learn from this in this series of Can You Think and Grow Rich Biblically? Okay, here's the truth. And this is why I think it's so important and a warning that I have for those that study Think and Grow Rich. There are principles in this world that God is designed on how to create, right? How to achieve something, how to be able to take an idea into reality. In fact, we're most like a creator when we're creating. If you look in Genesis 1:26, God looks at the creation and says, "Let us make man in our image." And what's our image? Well, who is God primarily? God is a creator, right? That's what he does. Now, we're not like God in the sense that God is in the Hebrew, God is the only one that can do what's called the Hebrew word of create is called barak. Barak, like Barack Obama, almost like that, right? Barak means to create out of nothing. Now, we as human beings cannot create something out of nothing. Like you can't just think of something and poof, like it comes out, right? But we're co-creators in the sense that we're able to think of ideas and we're able to take what it is that's within God's creation and we're able to shape things into a more organized way. For example, you might think of a new invention and you can take what's already been created and put it all together, right? The phone that you're using right now, let me put these metals together, let me put these circuits together, let me organize them in a certain way, program in a certain way. All of that raw material was already there, but it took your idea, God's idea that's in your mind, to be able to shape it into something different, right? So different type of a sense. All right. But here's a big warning. Because we see right in the very beginning of this biblical billionaire's journey that he had a dream, but there's an issue with this dream. And it's the biggest issue that each and every single one of us deal with. In fact, when we think about the topic of think and grow rich, it is the deepest want for each and every single one of us to want power, fame, sex, status, prestige, reputation. That is a deep, deep want. And if it's not tuned correctly, it can lead to our demise. There's a saying that in the Bible, it says, actually, it's so big that in the book of Proverbs, there's the big book of wisdom, twice, there's a way that seems right to man, but it leads to death. And we have to keep this in eternal perspective because what's the point of achieving the world? It says in Matthew 16:26, maybe you've heard this. For what good will it do a person if he gains the whole world but forfeits his soul? So we have to keep these in the eternal perspective because if you go through life and you achieve everything that you think that at the end of the day, you don't make it to heaven. I mean, what's $1 billion in the grand scheme of life, right? Like, so I want to make sure that we put this into balance, that it's important that we look at eternity in perspective. Okay, but at the same time, assuming that that's there are some very interesting things that we do get from this passage. Let me share one other thing as well too. Here's the big issue. To put it on the flip side of this, here's what we all deal with, and this is exactly what Joseph dealt with too. I'm going to read through Jeremiah 17. Let me just read this, and here's man's issue. Okay. This is what the Lord said. Cursed is the man who trusts in mankind, makes flesh his strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. For he will be like a bush in the desert, will not see when prosperity comes, will live in stony wastes in the wilderness, a land of salt that is not inhabited. But here's the promise. Blessed is the man or woman who trusts in the Lord and whose trust is in the Lord. Right? For he will be like a tree planted by the water that extends its roots by a stream and does not fear when the heat comes, but its leaves will be green and will not be anxious in a year of drought nor cease to yield fruit. Kind of like what Psalms 1 says. Now, question, put a 1 in the chat if you want to be like a tree planted in water and there's no fear when heat comes. Like that, or that sounds really, really good. Here's the issue that Joseph's dealing with. That if we can confront up front as we deal with this issue, then life will be much better, okay? Jeremiah 17:9. Here's the issue. The heart is more deceitful than all else and is desperately sick. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind to give each person according to his ways, according to the results of his deeds. We have to. Desire is not a bad thing. But desire that is not submitted in the right way could lead to a bad thing. Everything in this world starts with desire. In fact, if you look in Think and Grow Rich, the first chapter is labeled desire, the starting point of all achievement. We need desire. God created the world just because he wanted to, right? So I'm glad that the original creator had a desire because we want to be here right now, right? So it's important that we understand desire is fine. However, we have to also understand that the submitted desire that is not thought about, desire that is not worked through, honestly, is what the Bible is saying here, is by itself evil. Now, I'm glad this is resonating, right? That's just what it is. And you see it in Joseph. And what I like about the Bible is that it is real honest. It's right. It's not one of those. This is not one of those movies where it's like kind of predictable. It's like it's real people, right? Here's Joseph. He's like, I've got a dream. Maybe that's like how we are, right? All of us have a dream, and it's okay. Maybe we want to dream of making more money or having more wealth for our family or doing great things or building our dream business or all these different things, right? So he had the dream, but here was the issue. He did not submit it to the will of God at first. And guess what happened? Well, he had the dream, and God kind of took him through some testing. And I'm not going to read through the whole story, but it's a fascinating study. If you want to go through Genesis 37, it starts there, and go through Joseph, who starts with this dream of power. And it was a real dream. It was a dream from God. However, he did not submit it to his will. So what happened was God took him through a little bit of a wilderness. He gets sold to slavery. He ends up going through loops and hoops, and he gets tested and tested and tested. And 20 years later, there then comes an opportunity that he does go from the jail to second in command, to just second to Pharaoh. From dream to destiny. But if you hear what happens at the conclusion of this story, it's so powerful. Because the dream was still the dream. If you have dreams of wealth, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Let's be real. Who here has a desire to make more money? Put a 2 in the chat if you do. And I think we have to confront these things. Like, some of us feel like, oh, that's an evil desire. Some of us are like, no, that's exactly what I want. It's so important, though, to understand that that desire by itself is not a bad thing. Is not a bad thing. Because let me just give the conclusion to Joseph's dream. The biblical billionaire, what we learn from this is the reason why he became a multi-billionaire is because there became a huge famine in all of Egypt. And Joseph had learned some wisdom to be able to save the Egyptian people during that time, during this great famine. The famine became so great that the entire region actually had the famine, to the point that even his brothers who sold him into slavery in the very, very beginning were seeking out food, went to Egypt, went to Pharaoh, went to Joseph, who they did not recognize because it had been like 20 plus years. And here's Joseph, who had a dream, who got sold into slavery, who went through 20 years of loops and hoops, who became second in command to Pharaoh, became very wealthy, very powerful, became a multi-billionaire in today's status. But the purpose of his wealth was not just to make him great. The purpose of his wealth was to help others. And he ended up saving not only just all of Egypt with his wealth, but he ended up saving the same brothers that had sold him into slavery in the very beginning. And you can read the story for yourself, but they all get redeemed. They're all amazing. And that was the purpose. Proverbs 10:22 says that the blessing of the Lord makes rich and he adds no sorrow with it. The blessing of the Lord makes you rich, but it adds no sorrow to it. As we go through this concept, this book, this study of can you think and grow rich biblically, I want to make sure there's a balance to this, right? So number one, riches by itself are not bad or good. It's only how we put it so. I just want to make sure that as we get into this, because we're going to be diving into these concepts, the Bible has a lot to say with wealth creation. The Bible has a lot to say with riches. There's nothing wrong about riches by itself. In fact, it can be very powerful. It says the blessing of the Lord makes rich, it adds no sorrow. So if riches were bad, they wouldn't even say that, right? If riches were bad, it wouldn't talk about Solomon being a multi-trillionaire. It wouldn't talk about Joseph being a multi-billionaire. I'm also not saying that everybody is designed to be a multi-billionaire or anything, right? I want to make sure there's balance. Some people are designed by God's will to not have a ton of riches. But there are principles that are in the Bible that if you do follow, generally can yield to riches without sorrow. Okay? But I want to make sure that we confront the hard issue up front. Because as we go into 2023, I want everybody, if it's in the will of God, to make more money. Because if it's done the right way, you can do better things. If it's done the right way, you can help more people. If it's done the right way, like Joseph, you could serve your family, you could serve your community, you can serve your society. But we have to realize the number one issue first is that the heart is deceitful. And unless this desire is submitted and we just simply say, God, I know and I hope and I think that this dream is from you. This dream business, this dream income, this dream home, this dream whatever that it is, and just ask, right? It says in James 1:5, if you lack wisdom, just ask God and he will give it to you freely without any reproach. Just ask him. Can you give me some confirmation on this? Is this really from you? And how can I use this dream to elevate you and your kingdom? It says in Matthew, if you put first him and his righteousness, his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. So just have a healthy submission. Just pray about it, think about it, meditate on that just a little bit. And if it's confirmed, and then if you feel it's going to be used for the proper ways, there's nothing wrong about desiring more wealth. Because if you have more riches, if you have more wealth, if you have more resources, then in the right hands, like a Joseph later, you can do great things about that. Okay. So I wonder what you think about this. I wonder if this resonates with you. We're going through this whole series of Think and Grow Rich, but we're looking at it with a biblical lens and making sure that we can be balanced in both ways. So if that does sound interesting to you, be sure to catch up on this series. I put everything on our YouTube. Go to my link tree, go to my links, and you can go to the YouTube and you can subscribe. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on things as well too. Like, does this make sense? Is it true? Is it not true? Like, I'm be biblically balanced, make sure I can go through everything to make sure that we can confront these topics. Okay. So, and we also have a Telegram group called Kingdom Builders. If you're interested in joining that, I'd love to hear your thoughts there. And yeah, why does it say money? It does not say money is the root of all evil. If you look at the scripture itself, look in 2 Timothy, I think it's what, 3:16 or something like that. The love of money is a root of all evil. The love of money. You cannot serve man, you cannot serve God and mammon. So it deals with a hard issue on that topic. Okay. Don't desire riches over God. Desire God, and if riches come, and many times they do, then you use it for his purposes. So it's a hard issue. It's not a money issue, it's a heart issue. Right? Money's fine. Money's just a piece of paper. Right? But why wouldn't God, if it's your will, if it's his will for you, why wouldn't he want good people to actually have more resources to do good things? Right? That just kind of makes sense right there. But whenever something becomes priority over him, that's when the issues happen. We'll dive into these the next couple of days as we continue to go through this. Okay. And last quick shout out as well to you've been following as well. I just want to give a big thanks. We actually just finished my first book ever called The Miraculous Breakthrough Formula. I just got a mega testimonial, by the way. Like, I can't wait to share. This is incredible. It's a 7-day challenge, biblically guaranteed, to help you get unstuck and achieve the impossible in life. So if that's something interesting to you, we're actually praying for a Christmas miracle. We did a Kickstarter campaign to raise funds to launch this book. Check it out. You can get a copy and many things too. Thanks to everybody that has supported already as well. But check out, we're around 30% in. We've raised over $3,000 of this. So thank you, everybody. Check out the link tree in the bio as well too for information on that. And I'm excited about where this series is going. All right, guys. Hey, on that, happy eve of Christmas Eve.